By the end of this video, you'll see why performance pressure affects highly sensitive people so strongly, and how to work with your system instead of against it when you're being observed. In this video, you'll discover what's happening in your system when you're being watched, and why it feels so intense. How natural HSP traits like depth of processing and social sensitivity amplify performance pressure, and what helps you stay grounded without trying to override your natural responses. There's a very specific kind of pressure that can show up when you know you're being watched. It can be something small, somebody standing nearby while you're working. Or I sometimes just hear my partner walking by outside of the closed door of my office, and I start to be aware of, what is he thinking? Is he listening? Does it affect what I'm saying? All of those things. So someone observing you do something that would normally feel easy can suddenly become not easy. And you may find that it may not just be something small. It could be something larger, like a presentation or a conversation where you're feeling evaluated, or a situation where it feels like you're doing something that is being noticed. And what's interesting is that the task itself may not be difficult. It usually isn't. It might even be something you've done many times before. But the moment someone's watching, something changes. The body tightens, your attention shifts, you become more aware of yourself, more aware of what you're doing, more aware of how it might be coming across. And suddenly, something that was simple doesn't feel simple anymore. You might notice yourself thinking more, or trying to do it right, or trying not to make a mistake. You may find yourself trying to stay composed, or trying to appear confident or capable. At the same time, it can feel harder to access what you already know how to do. It's harder to stay natural, harder to move fluidly, and this can be confusing because part of you knows that you can do this, and another part of you feels like, why is this suddenly so hard? This is something a lot of highly sensitive people experience, and I imagine if you're listening that you've had this experience many times in your life. It's often misunderstood. It can look like nervousness or a lack of confidence or performance anxiety, but there's something deeper that is happening underneath. When you're being watched, your system doesn't just register the task. It registers the context that you're doing that task in. And context is very, very important for highly sensitive people. It registers the presence of another person. It registers the possibility of evaluation. And by what standard am I being evaluated? So one person will have one effect on you, just watching, whereas another person may have a different effect on you because of their different standard of evaluation. And for highly sensitive people, that input tends to be processed more deeply, more completely, more thoroughly. So instead of just doing the task, your attention is expanding. You're now aware of not only what you're doing, but of how it might be perceived, and of any subtle reactions that you might be perceiving from the other person, any little changes in body language or tone. You may start imagining what they're thinking, and you may be using some of your processing power to deduct what they're thinking based on how long they're pausing, what their energy looks like, etc. You may even be aware of how the other person is feeling, whether they're relaxed, whether they're judging, whether they're expecting something. All of that can come into your field at once because of your sensitivity. And now your system is holding much more than just the task at hand that you're set out to do. It is holding the task, and it's holding the social environment and the meaning attached to it. And that's a lot to carry in real time. And this is where the natural HSP trait of depth of processing plays a role, because you're not just reacting quickly, you're taking things in and you're considering them. That's what HSPs do. You're trying to respond appropriately, trying to do it well, trying to align with what feels right. And that takes space, that takes room, that takes processing power. And when you're being watched, there's often less room. And there's a kind of subtle pressure, a sense that something is expected, a sense that this moment matters now that they're watching. And that pressure can compress your system. So instead of having the space to process naturally, everything starts to tighten up. And that's when things can feel a lot harder. It's not that you're incapable, but that the conditions have changed now. You're no longer just focused on the task. You're no longer doing the task in isolation. And so the other area, the other part of the trait of being a highly sensitive person is social sensitivity. And this can amplify this experience even more, because now it's not just about doing something well, it's also about how it's received, like how it lands, what the other person might be thinking, whether they're approving or whether they're disappointed, and whether you're meeting some kind of standard that they're holding. And that can create a lot of internal monitoring. You start watching yourself and adjusting yourself and trying to get it right in real time. And the more you do that, the less natural it feels, the less fluid you become, and the more pressure starts to build up inside of you. This is why performance pressure can feel so intense, because it's not just performance, it's awareness layered on top of awareness. It's doing something while also observing yourself doing it, while also sensing how it's being received. That's a lot for any system to hold. And for highly sensitive people, it can become overwhelming very, very quickly. And then something else often happens. When it starts to feel harder, there's a tendency to push, to try to override what's happening, or to try to calm yourself down, or to try to force yourself to be more confident, or try to act like it's not affecting you. Just relax, just focus, just do it. But that can actually add another layer of pressure, because now you're not just being watched, you're also trying to control your response to being watched. And that can create even more tension and more self-consciousness and more effort. And over time, this can start to shape how you see yourself. You may begin to think that you don't perform well under pressure, or that you're not good when people are watching, or that you get in your own way, or that you should be able to handle this better. And this can lead to avoidance, and you may find yourself avoiding situations where you might be observed, avoiding opportunities sometimes, avoiding visibility, not because you don't want to grow, but because of how intense it feels in those moments. And this is where approaching this differently can help, because a lot of the struggle comes from trying to change what's happening in the moment, trying to calm yourself down, trying to perform normally, trying to act like it's not affecting you. But often when your system is already activated like that, there isn't much you can do right then. And that's important to see, because the pressure isn't just coming from being watched, it's also coming from the idea that you should be able to handle it differently. And when that doesn't happen, it turns into self-judgment. So part of what needs to change is not what you do in the moment, but how you relate to it afterward. Instead of using these moments as evidence that something is wrong, you can start to look at them more clearly. Like, what felt at stake for me in that moment? What was I trying to get right? What did I think they were thinking about me? And as those beliefs are questioned, the pressure begins to loosen. And alongside that, there's also a kind of acceptance that can develop, that this is a natural response for your system, and that it may not completely go away. And that changes how you approach these situations. You may choose not to put yourself in certain environments. You may be more honest in the moment, or you may step into these situations anyway without trying to prove something, but to gradually expand your capacity. Because there's another thing here. It's not just other people watching you. It's you watching yourself. And that's something that can be looked at with some inner work. That's something that can be worked with so that no matter what someone else is thinking, at least you're not adding on some internal judgments and pressure from your own side. So there's ways to play with this. And over time, with inner work, it is possible to become more resilient and less self-conscious in situations like this. But as an HSP, you may always have a kind of division of mind here because we naturally take in all of the things around us as highly sensitive people, and we can't just turn that system off. It's more about looking at what is amplifying the pressure within ourselves. If you recognize this pattern where you know you're capable, but the moment you're being watched, something tightens and it becomes harder to access what you know or what you know how to do, that is something we can look at together directly. Because for a lot of highly sensitive people, this doesn't just show up occasionally. It affects how you show up in conversations, in work, in visibility, and opportunities where you're being seen. And over time, it can quietly shape what you say yes to and what you avoid. And for a lot of people, this becomes one of those quiet limits where you don't fully show up the way you know you could. And this is one of those patterns where understanding it helps, but it's often not enough to shift it on your own, because in that moment, it feels very real. So if you'd like support with that, you can learn more about working with me one-on-one in the Working Together page on my website. Go to the video description and click on the first link you find, or go to trueinnerfreedom.com/working-together. We can look at this pattern together so you're not navigating that pressure in the same way.